And I've always felt that there are people who are inside organizations who do not understand the power of being inside.
Processes need to be automated. And this is where technology is going to come in. It's not going to replace you, but it's going to enhance the way we do things and the way we live as human beings.
I really think that when it comes to success, it's a mindset thing. It starts with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another enlightening, edifying, enriching. What other synonyms can I use?
I mean, what can you say? Ravishing.
Ravishing.
Spectacular.
Spectacular.
Scrumptious.
I like that. It's a brand new episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. Sometimes you must use all the English you have. Scrumptious. So today I brought the big guns. I don't want to lie. Never underestimate me, guys. I know people. So we have Kgomotso Mamello Motshidi. Do you use the middle name a lot?
I'll tell you how I actually got to use the Mamello in the middle. So it was 2009, and then I was being announced as Salesperson of the Year at Microsoft. And I didn't know that I was nominated or I was going to win the award. And then the announcer was like, Kgomotso Mamello Motshidi. And ever since that day, I was like, I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like me in completion, you know? And then I took it, and then it means, Mamello means patience.
Yes.
So I was in a time in my life at the time to say, I just need to learn patience, to exercise endurance for my journey. So when I take all my names, I literally personify them. So that's really how I got to use the entire name.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right.
That's a really nice story. So Kgomotso Mamello Motshidi is a highly experienced business strategist with a diverse background, spanning information technology, pharmaceuticals, and management consulting. A journey from Microsoft, as we've just heard, to Zora. Zora is kind, right?
The
That's
Zora
your
group,
business.
yeah.
Zora Incorporated and more showcases entrepreneurial spirit and results orientation. With a Bachelor of Commerce in Informatics from UNISA and an MBA in international business from MIB School of Management in Italy. What were you doing in Italy?
I was parling italiano, no? Voglio parlare italiano, no?
Is that Italian or?
Sì.
Oh, nice.
I haven't been speaking it for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
But it's still there. So yeah, I just went there to get my master's. I just wanted international exposure and also to be exposed to different cultures and the world of work, you know. And I think it really has come in handy, because when one goes out into the world, because in our classroom you had, for example, 15 different countries. Sure. So you're engaging with different cultures, different people. So that's what I was doing in Italy. So like learning the language, eating different food, but it's all about learning different cultures, so that, because one, we are citizens of the world. So when you live in a different place and you embrace and live in a different culture, you actually learn so much. And so really it was an invaluable experience.
Absolutely. And exposure, I think, changes your dreams, right?
100%.
I think sometimes all we need is a little bit of exposure. So thank you very much. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you remember, I told a story in the podcast. If you're new in the podcast, please go catch up, about how one day I went into an interview and I was quite formal in the interview process until about 10 minutes before the end of the interview. Then I became myself. And then the people who were interviewing me said, yes, that's the person we want. So I told that story, and the next guest is the person who was interviewing me on that day, Candice Martin. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I think for me, Siphiwe, we were so excited to bring you, like, you had everything on paper. And then we sat in that interview and it was like, where's the personality? Why were you holding back that day?
I don't know. People tell you to prepare well for interviews. And I had like a suit, which I had never been wearing suits at all. So it was very weird. It was very, very weird. So we have the ridiculously talented Candice Martin, seasoned professional, who has recently taken on the diversity, equity, and inclusion lead role from her immediate previous role as a talent attraction and engagement lead at PepsiCo. So very, very important job. And for me, Candice's extensive experience in talent advisory, talent acquisition, and human capital in a few organizations positions her as an authority on what employers really want when they recruit candidates. So people in HR, I always ask them this question: how many Kaz, can you find me a job? Do you get?
I get it all the time,
You
right?
get
So
it all
you
the
get
time.
it at the bra, you get it in your LinkedIn. Like, you should see my LinkedIn DMs, guys.
Is it?
I even have a template. I'm just like, I just revert them back to the career side every time.
That's so funny. So today's conversation delves into the myriad of themes. We'll talk digital transformation, skills of the future, generative artificial intelligence, emerging roles, and much more. So I'm really, really honored to be here. Kgomotso, Candice, thanks so much for coming.
It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you very much. Let's start with you, Kgomotso. Your journey a little bit. How do you get to the point where you are, where you're this rock star that you are? Where are you from? What's your journey, Jed? Give us a bit of a glimpse on who and
So
who you are.
Kgomotso is a girl from Pimville, Soweto. Yeah, boy, Kaslamaka. You know, I mean, we've got a golf course, we got the mall, we got a university. Yeah, I mean, that's Pimville for you. So it's exciting. I grew up in Pimville, Soweto, and I had very hardworking parents who really instilled discipline and a level of hard work in terms of us pursuing our dreams. And so to be where I am, it was on a journey to school. You know, in those days, we used to have Kumbi, but that day my mom was taking us to school, and on the radio there was an advert to say, if you want to make a lot of money, do IT. And at the time it was,
remember those days.
yeah, and it was at the time it was the Glenn Lewis show on Metro FM. I'm like, I want to make money. I don't know what I want to do. But then I started researching, because at the time it wasn't popular. You had to be an accountant, a lawyer. It was very unpopular. And then I come to my parents, I say, I want to do this IT, and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, I also don't know. But then I applied, and ever since, I was just literally, the technology bug hit me. Went back in the day. Can you imagine? I went to Vets Tech.
Oh my word.
I know, right? Telling off my age, but it doesn't matter. Still a part of the journey. And then when I was there, it showed me flames. First year showed me flames. But then I transitioned, and then IBM at the time was providing training for young people to get into the industry. Then I took on that opportunity, and then I trained. Within a year, I was already qualified. And then
IBM?
Yes, through IBM, through a company called Lechabile at the time, and then I got into a proper work. And at that time, I was 17 years old. So I started like working, because I'm on that crew that finished matric at 16. So from the age of like 18, I started working full time. And then got involved in different projects. Right now, I mean, the Joburg First Produce Market, that system, since 2001, it's working, and I was a part of that team. Statistics South Africa, when they did census. You can tell my age, right? Yeah, and then juxtaposed from being a systems developer, and really how I changed my career, it was my boss. He took me on a walk and he said, do you want to sit behind the computer your whole life? I said, but that's what I studied. He's like, no, there's a thing called sales in this career path. I'm like, sales. I'm like, for me, sales was, you know, those people, you know, in Joburg, ngena mama puma. I'm like, what am I going to sell? I don't sell. But then they took me on the course, and then I realized that there is a different side to this technology than just programming. And then they groomed me into a salesperson, and that's really how I really got into like companies. Example, like a company called PCW, when it's a German company, when they opened in South Africa, I was one of their first employees, and we built it up, and then I moved to Microsoft, and then studied overseas, and then came back into the country. But again, it was a very nuanced career. It was very fulfilling, because in terms of the role that I was doing, you going out to see clients. So I worked with the public sector clients, I worked with corporate clients, and then it gave me exposure in terms of not just saying, for example, doing a program, but then you're providing an entire solution for an enterprise. And that's the exposure that I got in terms of business development. I mean, we would have, for example, what we call EBSs, executive briefing sessions with CXOs, and make sure that we align them in terms of their technology roadmap. You know, I mean, that was the fun part. So we would do, for example, sitting down with financial managers and CFOs and show them a roadmap for TCO, total cost of ownership, for example, if you implement this technology over a period of years, this is what you would do. And that was really how I juxtaposed from being a systems developer into a technology business strategist.
That's so cool.
And you can imagine that back in those days, the CIO was always reporting into the CFO because IT was not an integral part of the business. But through it evolving and driving so much change in organizations, IT now sits in terms of being on the board, being on the C-suite, and being recognized. And even now, it is a driver of all businesses. If your business doesn't have technology, consider yourself to be a dying business. So that's the fun part, that throughout the years, one has seen the evolution of technology, from it being just a tool, but now to being an enabler. But now, even better, it's now an integral part of business. So it's really fun. And I think, as I said, that I do thank my bosses who started with me, and they said, you know what, we want to make you. They said, we want to make you. We don't see you just sitting behind the computer. And that's really how I literally evolved. And recently, for the past 10 years, I've been at the Zora Group, which is our company. We started it 10 years ago. Do you see the entrepreneur stripes? Because entrepreneurship is not all fun and games. It's not always glamorous. But throughout the years, this is how our business has evolved. And the same strategies I implemented while we were advising corporates, that's what we're doing in our business, but then also implementing solutions that are cutting edge and then driving the implementation of technology in organizations.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you've been planning that answer for years.
You know what? Actually, it's so funny. I thought I would have, but actually, as I'm talking, everything is coming back to me. And
so
I'm literally
nicely.
appreciating the journey.
Wow.
Because from where it started to where I am, I would have never guessed that I would be here. I mean, even running my own company, I don't think it was ever written down as a dream or as a wish. You know, I've always wanted something more, but I wouldn't have known that it would be packaged this way. And it's really, for such a time as this, who would have thought listening to a radio advert would help me choose a career?
That's incredible.
You need to send Glenn Lewis a thank you.
Yes, you must send him. What do they call it?
Glenn Louis.
I'm gonna slide into the DMs of Glenn.
You
Lewis.
changed my life.
Like just listening to that advert and also that thing. I remember telling my mom, my granddad. She's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, I don't know how to explain to him that I sit behind a computer, tell it what to do, and then it does what you need it to do. But then also I tell big businessmen on what they need to do, and I'm like, I don't know how to tell my grandfather what I do.
It's always been fascinating. I think if you look at tech companies like IBM, the Microsofts of the world, the Cisco's, there's always a nice, interesting bit of a tug war between the salespeople and the systems engineers. In fact, when you get there, you can tell who's the salesperson and who's the systems engineer.
Go to the parking lot.
Candice, so cool to see you. It's been a long time.
Lovely to be here and good to see you.
It's amazing. I know you have a new job and brand new from the box, as they say in South Africa. You've just moved to diversity, equity and inclusion space from your talent advisor, which is where I know you from. How's the transition?
I think the transition is one where I think my roles have always had diversity, equity, inclusion elements in it, but now it's the ownership of that particular portfolio and saying, okay, what is the change that I'm wanting to make? So I think I'm a little bit of a deer in headlights, but positively so, and really just doing as much as I can to learn and also listen. I think that that's an important part of that particular role, is that in order for you to be the change in the organization, you need to be listening to what the employees are saying and what their current experience is.
Take us back as well. Take us back on your journey. Was there a Glenn Lewis story as well?
Guys. No, so for me, it was Ali McBeal. It was my grandfather. It was Murdoch. I always wanted to be a lawyer. So from the time I was like 5 years old, I was like, I want to be a lawyer. And so for most of my high school career, I focused on, okay, that's where I'm going. Got into Wits University first year and
not Wits Tech.
Not Wits Tech. It's just down the road.
Yeah, like neighbors. neighbors, right?
Neighbors, but it's changed now.
You know, so got into my first year, and I mean, I was a casualty, I'll call that, of first year. So I mean, Kgomotso, you spoke about your experience. I passed everything, but with a very big stomach at the end of that like final semester, right? So I was pregnant with my daughter at 19 years old, and that changed my life quite substantially. And then kind of what had to happen is I had to pivot, right? So I went back to, so I did the UNISA thing. I went back to varsity full time once my daughter was 2 years old, and due to family circumstances, I needed to drop out. So at 22 years old, I was a college dropout. Yay, Kanye! Thank you for that. And so I then became the person that was looking for the job that you spoke about earlier on. It's like, okay, now I need a job, and all I have is a matric, and I don't have experience. And so a great opportunity came up from a family member or family friend who was able to place me in a contract role, curriculum development, right? So I was busy working with CETers and stuff that, and I was completely clueless, but I was in that role for 6 months, and I think at 22, a role in 6 months feels like 6 years.
Yes. True.
And I started getting itchy. I was like, I want something more. I want something permanent. I've got a daughter, you know. And so I ended up working as an operations assistant for a company, and I think I was also there for about 6-7 months, and I got retrenched, guys, like at 23.
You're too young for this.
Section 189 came for me. I was like, so understand, life was lifing. Life came at me hard at a very young age, right? And for me, I think my story is one of breaking barriers. And so what happened then is I went to a recruitment agency. They actually sent me out on an interview, and I was like, oh, I don't want to work for that company. And the MD said to me, Candice, we have an opportunity for you to come and work here. And so I took it with both hands. And so I started off as a PA for the first 3 months, and then thereafter moved into a recruiter role. And what then happened is, again, the itchiness, right? The ambition has always been there. The fire inside has always been there. And so I was also listening to the radio. Interestingly enough, it was a Saturday, and DAV had just won the small business side of best companies to work. Remember they used to have that.
I remember that.
And so I was like, and they were a recruitment agency, and I was like, I want to work for the best recruitment agency in South Africa. And so that's exactly what I did. I applied, I had the chat, I got in. And so I was at DAV for about 3.5 years. I think for me that was really my foundation, because I think whilst I was always ambitious and I always had things that I wanted to do, that environment was one that was tough. It was really, I mean, it's sales for all intents and purposes and following targets, etc. But what I really am so grateful to DAV for is the training. So on a Monday, they used to keep us in inverted commas. We were all very young. From I think it was 5 o'clock to about 6 or 6:30 every Monday, we had to stay in, and they would get external facilitators to come and teach us stuff. And I mean, vision boards were things that were happening then. We had Lewis Poe come, the guy that Polar the swimmer. We had so many influential people that came and spoke to us about their life stories, and so I think they really created a vision for us to say, you are the captain of your own life. What do you want? And so despite having a matric, I always had, okay, what is the next thing for me? And so after 3.5 years at DAV, I moved to Mutual and Federal, and I was very excited, enjoyed the work that I was doing then. But because I worked on the FNB account while I was at DAV for many years, I got a headhunting call from Hope Lokoto.
Yes.
And I'll never forget that call, because she called me and she was like, hey, Candice, I've just gotten your name, and I've got this talent acquisition manager role that maybe you might be interested in. I'd like you to come for an interview. And I was like, no, I don't have any management experience. She said, I didn't ask for management experience. When can you come in for an interview?
Wow.
And so I went in for the interview, and that's how my journey started at FNB. And I mean, it was a lovely journey. I was at FNB for 6.5 years before moving to First Rand Corporate Center for a couple of months. But for me, FNB, again, was an opportunity for me to be part of something bigger, work with amazing people like yourself, Siphiwe. And it was a cool company. It was amazing. And I was like, this is great. And then I suppose after being in the industry for so long, it was like, okay, I got a little bit excited to go somewhere else, and I ventured into PepsiCo. And PepsiCo being a global organization, I've learned so much, worked with amazing people. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's going full circle, right? So when I went into the talent acquisition space, I was always passionate. I was always obsessive about it because I knew there was a Candice somewhere or somebody who was like Candice, who had gone through similar experiences. And so now when I've gone into this diversity, equity, and inclusion role, so whilst in the talent acquisition place, I was interviewing people, I could give them tips in terms of how to interview, etc. But now I'm at the core of it. I'm at the core of looking at practices. I'm at the core of looking at policies, infrastructure, to ensure that we are able to bring people that are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds or don't have the qualification. I mean, I'm also proud to say that, you know, again, I completed my LLB. I went on to do my postgrad whilst working. So again, you have to continue with that dream and complete the stuff that you need to. But I think for me, the most important thing is now being able to, with the mindset that I have and the journey that I have, be able to enable other people to become part of that system.
Yeah. I think there's so many lessons from that story that I'm just itching
So
to
powerful.
To firstly, you know, you get an opportunity and you understand that the recruitment company that ended up taking you, actually they were supposed to be sending you somewhere, but they loved you so much they recruit you and you work for DAV, and then FNB says come work for us because it's like you're in an interview every day if you're a person, right? How you serve this client, someone else is looking. Just an incredible story. Thank you so much. I'm getting goosebumps.
Right.
Guys, don't you have like a goosebump effects? All right, let's get to the topic. I think Kgomotso, with your extensive background in IT, can you make sense of this changing landscape? I'm worried about, or I think concerned about the changing world of work, and people are concerned about IT and what is changing in the world of work. Can you give us a little bit of a, I guess, lay of the land? Are these disruptive technologies? Should I be worried if an employee, or can I benefit from this stuff?
I think one of the things is that one thing we all know is that change is the only constant, right? Everything around us is always changing. I mean, when you look, for example, from the 1800s, I mean, if you listen, there's been buzzwords, 4IR. It was 4IR on the go. And then now it's AI. And everybody doesn't know really where to start or where to go. But do not be afraid of technology, because evolution is part of who we are, I mean, as humankind. But the thing about it is, with the disruptive technologies, is that every technology that comes or any innovation that comes can be deemed as disruptive. And so it's a matter of how do you embrace it to make sure that the environment that you're in and that you're creating for your employees is one that can embrace the technology. I mean, she just mentioned that she was at FNB and it was a very dynamic environment. So if you look at the banking sector, let's say 50 years ago, people would write checks and then have to come and collect. But then technology came in and then people started doing bank transfers, and then now they are doing, no, people don't go to the bank anymore, but then they can do EFTs and e-wallets. Those are just technologies that are being embraced by society. So it's a matter of technology is not here to threaten jobs, number one. It is here to enhance what we do. I mean, again, talking on the, let's say, industrial revolutions, the first one was on the, for example, the steam engine. Then you realize then we had locomotives and things moving faster. The innovation of vehicles, it didn't change mankind, but it enabled us to become better. Then you looked at, for example, in the 1950s, the introduction of technologies, computers, typewriters and things like that. Again, it enhanced humanity. But then right now we've got the buzzwords and your AI, your cloud, all of those technologies that are already here, but we are already using. So it's a matter of fact of in the workplace, let's make sure that for starters, we have policies that overarch how we engage with the technology. So for example, you make sure that your employees understand the company policies in what we are going to do with the technology, so that people, for example, don't have access to people's bank accounts in the banking sector, or and get information that is privy. So you overarching in an organization, you need the company policy. Number two, when you look at, for example, right now, the buzzwords, AI, right? AI is very nuanced, and I think I'll explain it later. So with regard to the technologies that are here, it's a matter of equipping people with the skills that are needed. For example, right now, you realize that there is a shortage of skills for data analysts. There's a shortage for cybersecurity specialists. There's a shortage for those people who are developers, machine learning, analytics and all of that. So it's a matter of saying these are the jobs of the future. And how do you align, with regard to getting yourself relevant for the world of work? And that's what people need to look at. We're talking to a company that has got engineers. And in that environment, you realize that a lot of the people, let's say in their 40s, they might have plateaued in their career. And we say, instead of thinking I'm going to carry myself for the next 20 years doing a mundane job, how do I reinvent myself? So you can say IT department, I'm just making a hypothesis. You need skills in, for example, cybersecurity or data analysts. How about we take these engineers and train them and they can join the IT team? So this is all about being evolving for the world of work.
And sometimes the skills gap between the job you have and the job of the future is not that big.
It's not that big because, for example, the principles are the same. Let's say in engineering, an engineer can juxtapose from being an engineer to being a business process engineer. Because why? They understand process, then they can just learn the technology that enables them to map out processes in a company, and boom, they can change jobs.
That's interesting for me because, Candice, I think you've always been at the forefront of what employers really want when they look at candidates. If you think back, has that changed? Is that changing? Are you looking for a different person now than you were, for example, about 10 years ago? What are some of the things that you kind of want from the employee of now and of the future?
I think the reality is for a lot of global organizations, and I think we'll see this in South Africa too, is the fact that, we've done what I'll call tick box recruitment in the sense that we want a CV that has the degree coming from a specific institution, right? We then want to see the experience. We then want to see that this person comes from a similar or the same industry. And it's a safe recruitment exercise because it's kind of like, okay, this person can do it because they're coming from the exact same place or a similar place. And so in order for companies to really future-proof themselves, they now need to start looking at skills-based recruitment. And that's the trend that we're seeing currently, is that companies that are sort of looking to the future and know what they need from a skills base, or at least from a talent base, is they starting to do what we call a taxonomy of skills, right? So they'll say, okay, these are the 90 skills that we need across our organization. And they're now plotting them against those job descriptions, as opposed to saying, this is a JD and this is how, it falls into the organizational design, etc. So I think we're looking at it from an HR principal perspective very differently, which then results in us being able to open up the diversity of our recruitment pools, right? So that we're not focusing so much on where did you go to school or which company do you have the skills to do the job?
Sure.
Right? And I think for me, this is where the kind of the tire hits the road, is that companies are looking at employing this across the talent life cycle. So to your point, Kgomotso, around doing that transferal of skills, or what we call slashies, people that are able to move into different roles, is it's looking also at your workforce and saying, who are those people that can, flow naturally into different career paths. So I think it just opens up a brand new and a bigger ecosystem for organizations, but also in terms of talent attraction, you're able to get so many more candidates through the door and potentially the best candidate for the jobs.
That's so good for me because there are so many graduates who have studied a particular degree and they're hearing stories about how that particular degree is no longer relevant and they're giving up because they think I'll never work. But what you're saying is that we can actually look at the skills, not necessarily what you've studied. And therefore, if I'm sitting there and I understand that a particular organization needs analytical skills, whatever, I could have learned that in any of the roles. I just need to pull those up and present those instead of fussing about the degree that I had that is no longer relevant, right?
100%.
That's so amazing.
That is really, really cool. I love that a lot. Kgomotso, can I get a bit personal? So this idea of adapting, adaptability is becoming very, very clear that people who are going to succeed in the future are adaptable. They know how to be flexible so that they can position for themselves. Tell us about a story where you've had to adapt. And I think if you didn't adapt, maybe you wouldn't be here.
Okay, where I had to adapt was when I was in Italy, and then I was working for a pharmaceutical company called Eli Lilly. And this is the part where I think I like what Candice was saying, to say we look at people's skills in terms of what is it that they have that we can literally use it. And that is so powerful because it's a personal experience. So here I was in a foreign land speaking a different language, and right there I'm in the middle of
and it sounds romantic, by the way.
And right there I was asked to do a project with regard to dealing with a problem called parallel trade.
Okay.
So parallel trade is the movement of goods. So for example, in Europe, you've got high cost and low cost countries. So your low cost countries are Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. And then your high cost are your Germanys, your France, etc. And then now in Europe, you've got the free movement of goods and people. And then they are overarched by antitrust laws. However, the pharmaceutical sector is regulated by country. So for example, the cost of medication in Italy will be a certain price, and then in France will be a certain price. However, because you've got the free movement of goods and people would export the medication from Italy to another country, and you cannot and then there'd be a shortage of the medication in the other country, and that was the problem I was supposed to solve. And when I got there, I was like, okay, I'm not in pharmaceuticals, and here I am studying a patient journey, and I'm like, okay, now coming back to what she said, the skill. I brought in the technology to say, how can we use technology to make sure that we can enable that there is no shortage? There's the skill coming in. It had nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. And that is the thing that said, it helped me change to see that technology is across the board, across industries and across environments, and literally across countries. And also then I realized that is when I can literally take it anyway. And because I was afraid because I don't speak the language. I didn't know if they'd understand me. And, and I thought it will be a barrier. I mean, there were so many things that were a barrier. I'm a black woman, there's a lot. But in that environment, they allowed my skill. And this is where diversity comes in. And she said it very powerfully, to say once you open people up to leveraging of the skill that they can bring to the table. And I must be honest, so while I was there and I was looking to come back to South Africa in the same company, then I applied in the same company. I'm in Italy applying for the South African role, and the South African people said, I don't have pharmaceutical experience.
Yeah.
Exactly. The same company. And then I said,
What did you say?
What did I say? Don't quote me on what I said. I said, yeah, that's why I'm in Italy. These people appreciate me for who I am. And that's where diversity comes in, because had they not tapped into the skill of the girl in technology who's from South Africa, they would have not had a part of the solution to the problem by looking at, she did say it, to say the people look at where you are from, which company you're from. No, I'm not from any company that is pharmaceutical. I'm a tech girl, but I could solve a problem that you're facing. And already now we are utilizing, it was actually part also of my MBA thesis. We're using that as a tool with regard to enabling, with monitoring shortage of farmers' drugs in the value chain, and that is the thing, to say, if I was not given an opportunity, you see, and that really changed my life, to say, you can take this tech thing anyway. And again, I love what Candice said earlier, to say, once you don't just look at people's experience, once you not just look at their skill, but you look at their capability and what they bring on the table. And that's where the world of work is going. The world of work has to say, recently we just interviewed somebody with chemical engineering. We are an IT company. And she was like, I believe that I can do this. And then you're like, that's the kind of person you want, because they're not saying, I'm in chemical engineering for an IT company. They're saying, I've got the capability. But it takes somebody to look at the person and say, okay, with that, what can we do with it? Because the world is changing. And this person is not saying, I'm a young person, I'm frustrated, but where do I go with my chem eng? But they're saying, there's something else I can do. And that's really how we're looking at to juxtapose the world of work, to say, this is the direction we need to go. Look at what people bring. And I think that for me, that was a very pivotal moment to say, look, don't just, you see now I'm applying it on the other side to say, it happened to me. And in the experiences that we go through, Candice, also affect how we respond to people when we're on the other side of the chair.
100%.
This is so powerful, because I think there's someone discounting themselves and they wouldn't apply for that IT role because they think, I don't have IT. I think the times of restricting yourself to whatever you have studied have changed.
Correct.
Even if you don't have depth in that industry, but your breadth of experience in different industries can be applied to any industry. You wanted to add
Yes,
that?
I wanted to say, Siphiwe, is that also what we're seeing is that if you look at your job description as an example, what your job description was like about 5 years ago, it's probably changed between like 20 to 30% in terms of the skills and the actual write-up. And so projecting from a LinkedIn talent connect perspective, they're saying probably around 2030 that your job spec would have changed about 60%, right? So what, let's say an HR officer needs to provide today is going to be 60, well, let's say about 30% different in 2030. And I think for me, that's also profound in the sense that if you are in a specific role in any organization, you need to be on top of what is happening globally. What are the trends? What is best practice? And what are those skills? So we've spoken a lot about AI and we haven't gone fully into depth, but what was interesting for me is also the fact that we've learned a new skill this year. So anyone who's used like ChatGPT, prompting is a skill.
Right.
And understand that like if I go into ChatGPT and we're all asking the same question, we're going to prompt ChatGPT differently, and it's about also then fine-tuning that skill. So for me, that's what I find fascinating is the fact that, let's not only think about the skills that we've acquired, in our professional life, but what are we also doing in our personal life, and how do we bring that or showcase that in our CV?
I think that's such a nice segue to talk about. So a lot of, when you read reports by the World Economic Forum, you see a lot of stuff around declining job and emerging jobs. Yeah. And if someone is listening to this conversation and saying, I think you spoke a bit about data science and so on. What are these declining jobs? What are these emerging jobs? Should I be studying those, or it's really not about what I'm studying? Any one of you want to comment?
Yeah, so when you look at the world of technology, I'm going to dive into AI just a little bit because it is the buzzword.
Absolutely.
It's very nuanced and there's many layers to it. And she just touched that you've got, for example, the levels of generative AI, which is your chat GPTs where you enter a prompt and then it gives you something. Then you've got creative AI, the ones whereby you create images, 3D images and changing images, and that's part of creative AI. Your mid journeys, those type of tools that are out there. Then you go a level higher. You got AI that does, for example, voice recognition, Siri, Alexa. Already we are engaging with AI on some level. When, for example, you switch on Netflix and then it provides you with things that you can watch. Already that is AI, and that taps into, for example, your some parts of your psychology, and it monitors the trends on the things that you watch. And then in search engines, your Googles, then they say you are most likely to. That is an enablement of AI, and that's just AI in a nutshell. So when you look at the skill set, it's very nuanced. So you have to see where you're gonna fit yourself in, and then also, but when you dig deeper in terms of a technology perspective, there's things like cybersecurity. There are elements whereby you have to check, am I going to be, what kind of a cybersecurity expert am I going to be? Am I going to do, for example, data-centric protection of information? Am I going to do it on the network layer? Am I going to do it on the application layer? There's different layers to it. Then you have cloud computing. The world of work. I mean, I think she can attest to it that since COVID, the world of work has changed. People can work hybrid, work at home, for example, work in the office, and this is enabled by cloud technology. So you can, even organizations can choose in terms of how they host their applications. Are they having it on-premises? Are they having it in the cloud, or are they having a hybrid model?
Where's this cloud, by the way?
Somewhere.
I always look up.
And the funniest thing is that's why we always need to break technology down.
Yes,
because the
please.
thing about it is the cloud is enabled by connectivity, networking, and then you put the information in service.
Yeah.
And then, so we've got, for example, here in South Africa, on the African continent, on the coastline, we've got CCOM, which is a cable that connects Africa to Europe. And that's where the information sort of passes by, goes to the servers in Europe, and then comes back. So, but one of the interesting things is that when you open yourself up to the world of technology, you got to know which part do you want to be a part of, and don't just follow the buzzword. Don't be overwhelmed by AI. What about cloud? What about cybersecurity? What about those who are being developers, developing applications? So there's a different layers. And going back to what she was saying earlier, to say the skill. Find your niche, find your skill. I mean, there's always releasing the top 10 technologies to follow in each and every year. Find the one that you can do a skill on. And make sure, I mean, your IBMs, your Microsofts, your Google, they provide some of the training for free or through different institutions. Then you can get yourself a badge or a certification, and that alone can get you through the door. And so it comes back to say the world is changing, and don't be caught sleeping, because 10 years from now you could be obsolete, not because technology took your job, but you chose not to follow the wave.
Sure.
And it's like, when somebody is surfing, the wave comes. If you don't catch it, you don't ride the wave. So this is what's happening. The wave is coming. The tide is turning, but you must make sure that you catch the right wave.
And you can't also stand there and just panic and
just
do
panic
nothing.
and do nothing,
Yeah.
because you will literally make yourself obsolete. So the world is constantly changing. Make sure that you put your finger on the pulse. And I mean, there's so many opportunities in the technology sector. I mean, for example, we also focus on cybersecurity in our company, and we looked at the statistics in terms of the number of jobs that are available. There's 2 million jobs available in cybersecurity as we speak. I mean, this is not even AI. Right? One element, cybersecurity. And now we're looking at, for example, the population in Africa. We've got young people, right? And what we're saying she said it, you don't necessarily have to have a degree to enter the world of IT. You can just get yourself a skill. So if, for example, we focus to say we've got a high unemployment rate, and we've got almost like 40 or 60% of young people who are not in the world of work, how about we change, and collaborate? Establish PPP, public-private partnerships between governments and business, to say, how do we get these young people into the world of work?
That's so important for me, because I think the other thing that people are panicking about, they think everything around the change of world is IT related, is AI related. But I think sometimes it's about the skill.
Right.
And I want to give people a few ideas of what are these skills of the future. I know in those lists, the ability to analyze, the ability to think critically, and all of that. Are those the kind of things that we're looking at? And if you look at some of the roles that you used to recruit for, what are the things that you are looking for as employers right now?
So I think just to go back on what are those declining skills, right? So what we're seeing, because I kind of think it paints the picture. So what we're seeing in a lot of organizations, it happened at FNB, it's happening across the world, PepsiCo currently, is we're looking for roles where there's high repetition, so that highly repetitive tasks in specific roles. And we're moving those to either like shared services environments, or we're looking to enable it through technology. So if you think of like Vodacom, you've got Toby, who's going to chat to you instead of a call center agent. So what's happening is what happens to those people, right? So those people then can take those skills that they have. Let's talk about like customer service, etc. Where can we move those people into roles that they can still be? Because again, with customer service, you can't move everything sort of off those platforms. You're still going to need those human-centric conversations, and so we're seeing that kind of happening within organizations. But if I look at like what are those inclining roles, I would have to say, like looking at the South African landscape, we've got a very big agriculture industry. And so we're looking, so I think for me, also specifically, you know, we've seen historically that it's been very sort of white dominated or white male dominated. And what I have had the privilege of seeing is young black females really getting interested in agriculture. Not just, I suppose, black, youth in general, but for me, it kind of gives me a little bit of tingle when I see black females getting interested. And so that is definitely a space in which African females can like really have a big impact going forward, just because it is something that we rely on so much from a GDP and an economy perspective. I think other things like healthcare. So again, we know that these, as much as people are worried that they're going to lose their jobs through technology and these robots, is that there's certain things like healthcare, whether it's nurses, whether it's like hospital practitioners, think about the infrastructure that's needed within a hospital. And so if that's, you know, something that you're inclined to do, or it's just kind of part of your nature and your passion, I would also consider looking at that as a variable to perhaps IT. Lawyers are still going to be needed as much as people are like, oh no, I don't need a lawyer anymore because I can use all of this AI. The reality is you're still going to need an expert to be able to guide you. And so the reality is that if you're looking at the roles that are going to be around in 2030, they're pretty much the same. And it goes back to my point earlier on. It's just about the skills required to do the job is going to be different because of the technology aspects that are going to be incorporated into your job. So when you're thinking about skills, as you've already said it's the problem solving, it's cognitive flexibility. So it's being able, because remember we've spoken about 4IR, right? So we're in an information age where information is coming at us like at a rapid speed like never before. And so we've got to be able to discern and disseminate information. So again, data analysis is another skill that's going to be needed. And so, yeah, I think for me it's about we can't look at these things in isolation. I think the trends are trending, but I think for me it's like you've got to look at the specific industry that you want to get into and read up about it, research about it, and then also understand what are those skills that are going to be needed for the future, so that you can direct your own path. Because I think that's also you've got to own your own career.
True.
You've got to.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do this comment, but I'm going to pretend I'm having a conversation, but I know this one is going to go on those TikTok shorts, you know? So one of the exercises, let me change my tone. One of the exercises that I think every person can do, I am joking, I can't sustain. But you know, when you look at that World Economic Forum report on the declining job and emerging jobs, one of the things I've tried to do, sometimes when you look at those, I think you were alluding to this, when you look at these declining jobs and the emerging jobs, you start realizing, like for example, we were told in the HR space that the HR might be declining, but organizational development is increasing. So you can start seeing that there's a 60% match from this HR person to that OD person. So I think the message that we're saying, thou shalt not panic, but also thou shalt not sit and do nothing, right?
I want to quote you. I was in one of your talks, Mr. Moyo, where you taught us about the I's and T's.
Oh,
remember?
Yes.
So you were saying that the I is something that you need to be in depth.
Yes.
That, for example, your skill,
Yes.
if let's say you're an engineer, and then the T, whereby you can broaden yourself so that you can be adaptable. So back at you.
Where's the poo 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 poo? Here's this guy, man. Here's this guy.
We do need that poo 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 poo.
That's not the one.
You tried.
All right, guys. Yes! That's the one. I want to nudge the conversation to this idea, therefore, of the human-machine frontier. Are robots replacing us? what should we be doing? If I'm sitting there, I'm an employee, and I'm hearing these robots are coming or they are already here, what should I be doing just to position myself a little bit? Should I be trying to make myself a little bit more human? And you were saying that there's a digital transformation to the repetitive, mundane, maybe mundane is not a good word, but to the repetitive tasks. But surely the stuff that human beings can do, that's where we should be leaning towards, no?
You know what? And I think I'm just going to add to what she said earlier. It's not a matter of, for example, processes need to be automated. And this is where technology is going to come in. It's not going to replace you, but it's going to enhance the way we do things and the way we live as human beings. So what you need to do, number one, do not panic. Do not panic. Go into yourself and find, for example, your passions and what it is you can do. For example, I saw a meme. It's a building and it says, "Hey ChatGPT, complete this building." And ChatGPT is not going to complete a building, but human beings will. And what we're saying is that this is a time where we all need to do an evaluation of ourselves, dig deep into the things that you know you can do. If you need a wedding cake, ChatGPT is not going to bring you a wedding cake. So if you've got a skill, again, the I's and the T, to say if you've got a skill that you can use, that machines cannot replace you, do that. But then also, if you feel that you're going to still be in corporate for a while, make sure that you align yourself to skills that can help you enhance. And it's not a matter of saying that you're going to be obsolete. But the thing is, you got to know where the world is going. You got to be very conscious of the environment that you're in and realize that it is not here to replace you, but it is here to enhance the way we do things as humans. And technology is good. I mean, remember in those days we had those Nokias where all you could do was play Snake. But right now we've got little computers in our hands. I mean, we would have to do backup tapes of servers. Right now everything is a click away. You just do it. I mean, did it take my job? No. But at the end of the day, it enhanced the way we do things. So remember that it's not here to replace, but it's here to enhance. But in the process, as an individual, make sure that you analyze yourself as an individual. Take control of your career. Take control of your life so that you can then use technology to make yourself better. And then you could be the one, as I said, and I always tell young people that, look, the jobs are there. There are a lot of jobs. But you need to make sure you've got the right skill for that job.
That comment for me, one of the things that frustrate me, Candice, I don't know, and you know, most organizations, and probably yours as well, you've already talked about the fact that someone was doing customer service, you remove the repetitive stuff and you reskill them for something else.
Yep.
And I've always felt that there are people who are inside organizations who do not understand the power of being inside.
Right.
There are reskilling opportunities.
That's so good.
There are learning opportunities. Some organizations are paying for these MOOCs like Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, and people are not taking up those opportunities. If I'm an employee, shouldn't I be having a conversation with either the HR team and so on to raise my hand around reskilling or something?
And I think, you know, I agree with you on owning it. And what I believe, and I think, you know, I'm generalizing now, but I think a lot of, whether it's South African or global companies, have invested in learning and development. They've got, you know, different parts that you can follow. They've got different bursaries that you perhaps could, apply for. If I think of PepsiCo as an example, we've got something called PepU, which is like a university. You can literally go on there and there's like a myriad of stuff.
Sure.
Outside of your company, maybe you work for a smaller organization, nothing stops you from YouTubing, from seeking out stuff outside of your organization. And so for me, I really think that when it comes to success, it's a mindset thing. It starts with you, right? And so for me, it's about the fact that I think sometimes as South Africans, and again, a generalization, we like to complain, guys. We love to complain. And I mean, it takes me back to like 2010 before some of the stadia were built. and everybody's like, we're not gonna make it. We're not gonna make it. I mean, we also have our 1 point wonders. You know, again, they created that flux like literally a couple of days ago. And I think for me, it's about as South Africans, we've got such a rich, diverse culture, rich, diverse history, and it's so important for us to really back ourselves, right? So as an individual, back yourself, but also if you're in an organization or if you're an entrepreneur, you got to back the people that you work with, guys, because it takes a community, it takes all of us. And I think even if we're talking, so I think earlier on we touched on that, youth unemployability, or at least our high unemployment rate, is that I think also there's an opportunity for us to come together. So if you're thinking about specific industries, and I'll think of like, I'm going to use the example of Vodacom, NTN, and Cell C. Instead of trying to like fight each other for, whatever talent it is that they're looking for, how can they work together to understand what that ecosystem is and start building out together those bursary programs, those learning opportunities for people that are still in school. So we need to, I think, really get a little bit more strategic about what is the skill sets that we're going to need, what are the talent that we need, and how do we go back to grassroots to ensure that the skill is available when we need it.
So I'm told that we're running out of time, but I still have so much to
bring us back.
About. I don't have people who struggle to talk here. What are digital skills? Where can I get them?
Okay, so the digital skills are very broad. As I mentioned, that there's different nuanced technologies that one can get. You can look into cloud. So you can
that's also digital skills.
Yes, digital skills. So you look into cloud, you can look into cybersecurity, you can look into AI, you can look into data analytics, you can look into being a developer. So also there's also the element of being, let's say, network engineer. And then as a network engineer, then you manage, for example, the connectivity and setting up and the architecture. So there's different things within technology. But then also on a softer side, you're looking at, for example, design thinking, things that enable you to, with regard to process mapping, business process engineering. So there's lots of skills that one can attain. Also, a simple thing like project management, because all these things that we do need somebody who can enable the projects to run. Then you also have, from a digital side, you're looking at sales and marketing. All this technology that comes, somebody must market it, somebody must sell it. So there's always a softer side to the technology. And so nobody's going to be obsolete, So if you're you're very astute in marketing, and for example, there's a new product coming out in terms of AI, then you can sell that on behalf of a company and do B2B sales, but then there'll be somebody in the background who's going to implement it, who could be, for example, the data analyst or whatever. So make sure that you find your fit and then plug yourself in your strength, and then you'll be able to flourish really. And also the idea of continually, you can go.
No, carry on.
Okay, cool. And also the idea of continually evolving. It's important because one time you could say, I'm talking about me. I started behind the computer programming. I then became, on B2B sales, and that's where I flourished. I still had the technical know-how, but then moving into B2B sales and and business strategy in IT, it's also important. So, for example, if somebody was, let's say, in a corporate developing strategy, now they can come and say, okay, I've learned a skill, which is cloud. Now let's merge that in terms of how the organization is going to drive forward their strategy using the understanding that I have with regard to cloud technology. I mean, those are the things that people do not be afraid. I mean, right now we're looking at executives that we are talking to in terms of AI. And then they're like, okay, all this buzzword, what are we going to do in our organizations? And it's a matter of saying the big guys, instead of them cutting the budget, let them know what it's going to do so that they can release the budget to ensure that they empower their people. So even senior execs, so you're looking at people who, for example, the last time they did was Microsoft Word. And right now there's all of this ChatGPT. They don't even know where to begin. And that's where the element of incorporating diversity, transgenerational, transracial, inclusiveness. I mean, this is what you do, diversity and inclusion, because those who are in their 60s right now are need to also learn from those who are in their 40s and also those who are in their 20s, because there can be a convergence of knowledge and skill so that you are able to reach the right market. I just want to say one last thing on this one. For example, something like TikTok. TikTok is the highest grossing marketing tool right now. It's higher than YouTube. Yeah. Now, if you're a man, CEO, exec, and then you're like, this TikTok, it's just a game. You could be missing out on reaching a target market through a thing. You think it's just young people dancing, but it's a marketing tool. So that's where the convergence comes in. And obviously, you can't be as a baba dancing on TikTok. We will think, Abazali, your parents.
we're doing something else on TikTok. My daughter thinks there's another version of TikTok that I use.
You know what I'm saying? But once we educate to say this is how you actually get the target market using TikTok. It just got nothing to do with the marketing plan that you had in terms of B2B, no market, the 5 Ps. It's TikTok and it's here. And you can't get away from the fact that it is here, and so those are some of the things, utilizing technology, but finding your soft spot, because somebody in marketing is not the same person developing it, but we are all going to coexist in the ecosystem. But the integral part that brings us together is the power of technology.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to tag on to what Kgomotso was getting me vibing, is that if you think about it, it's really about where are we now in 2023. It's all about experience, right? Everybody, it's whether you're going traveling or, the employee experience, or what is the customer experience. If you look at what organizations are doing, they're streamlining, they're simplifying through technology. But going back to that point around the human centricity, is we need people to provide that human link.
Touch,
yeah. And so I think for people that are kind of seeking or looking for different opportunities, it's really around what experience do you want to create, or what are the experiences that you want to design or that you want to impact. I think that's a great place to start when thinking about your career and where you want it to go.
So before you end.
I'm done.
They're trying to tell us something. What are they trying to tell us? 10, 5?
We're out of time.
How much can I go? 2.
Okay.
2 minutes. All right. So I still have a few things I want to ask, but we're going to give them sharp, quick answers because I want to ask as many of them as I can. But add on that quickly.
So coming to human touch. So in our company, we developed a bot called Kayomi.
Yes.
So Kayomi is an AI generated bot.
I saw that.
Yeah, she's a pretty girl.
Where do we find Kayomi, by the way?
Yeah, we find her on TikTok. We've put her on TikTok as well as on YouTube. Kayomi.ai, KYOMI.ai.
Yes, cool.
So what Kayomi does, she educates entrepreneurs on the power of AI. Like, for example, if somebody needs to develop a website, then she shows you how to do that using AI. But then for corporates, she's educating. For example, if you have a training program, she does that for you. Online, you don't necessarily have to have a trainer and things like that. And then promoting products for companies. And then now we're getting her to speak different languages so that she's relatable in terms of different things. And that's the thing, to say it needs to have a human touch. And that's why we created Kayomi the bot, to say in as much as we're using technology, but it still needs to be relatable. She doesn't have to look like a caricature. She's very popular in a company. I never thought that the bot will be popular.
Who would have thought? We didn't have the internet when we were growing up, guys. That's how old we are.
Right.
I'm imagining people looking at both of you thinking, aren't they 29?
We know where the fountain of youth is.
Yes. So I want us to answer the other questions that I'm going to ask. Think about it as if you're answering for TikTok, short attention spans, but we still want the power, the impact. Can we play that game?
Let's try.
Sure,
Let's try. It's going to be very, very cool. The role of diversity, equity, and inclusion in these robots. Apparently, these things can actually be biased as well. What should organizations do?
I think organizations need to take a balanced approach. I think they need to investigate the technology, and they probably need a team investigating the technology, and they need to have a team that's probably criticizing the technology. When we come together, we have a chat, we understand what the problems are, go back to the technology company, ask if they can solve that problem, and then we're good to go.
I read a report that says, in fact, from KPMG, because of the technology, yes, we're going to lose some jobs, but the jobs that we're going to gain are much bigger than the jobs. So in terms of the net jobs, this technology is actually going to create more jobs. Is that true? And if I'm thinking about that, how do I make sure I benefit instead of losing from this tech?
what you need to do is make sure that you do career mapping and make sure that you understand the technologies that are going to be pertinent and make sure you get the skills for that so that you can upskill yourself and move your career from being, again, for example, everyday mundane jobs. Look at the ones that are the English data bundles loading.
No, it's the time pressure. It's the time pressure.
Let's load the English data bundles. So the thing is, you have to look at the careers that are doing everyday regular jobs, and those are most likely going to be automated. So if you see that, make sure that you see how you can change your career to get you into a skill that is going to be needed, other than something that can be automated and, for lack of better words, being replaced. But again, once you look at the jobs that are coming and you get the right skill, then that's how you're going to benefit of the jobs that are coming.
I have a theory that if I'm unemployed right now, I actually have a better chance of having a hustle because I can go to YouTube, teach myself something, and because of this tech, and become an expert when I didn't have to go to university. Are we wasting our data and not trying to use our data for important things in our lives?
100%. I think if I think of companies are looking at opportunities right now with jobs where they don't need degrees, right? So the reality is that for me, if you are unemployed at the moment, do you want to work for corporate? I think you need to also ask yourself that question. Some people grew up at very young ages saying they want to be entrepreneurs, they want to be business people. And if that's something that you want to do, I like, for me, I'm one of those people that doesn't necessarily, I call myself a corporate head sometimes, but I do look to business owners with such admiration because I know that it's, so risky, but it's also such an intimate project. So for me, I think people need to be honest. Like, do you want a job or do you want a side hustle? And if that, whichever one it is, and again, you could have a job and a side hustle at the same time. So again, these things aren't mutually exclusive. I think people just need to be intentional about what it is that they're searching and not get stuck in a TikTok loop. So I think we really need to be mindful of what we're consuming and how it's going to take us to where we want to go.
I love the fact that you referred to yourself as a corporate hand, because I've always thought you're one of the people in my life who convince me that corporate and workplace doesn't have to suck.
Yes.
You do this thing so well.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my tattoos, like, I'm having fun, like, my hair sometimes is different colors.
Yes.
And, like, again, I think for me, it's just the authenticity. I've always been able to go into a corporate organization and be myself. Sometimes, it hasn't been so nice, but then I know that that's not the place that I need to be. But for me, I've found so many places, F&B, PepsiCo, where I thrive because I can bring my full self to work. So, yeah, those are, like, find the right environments and the right people that you're working with, right mentors, right bosses. They really change the experience.
So this has been an amazing conversation. People should be paying top dollars for this. But I also want, as we close, imagine you have an opportunity to give like the best career advice that you would want to give for 2024, and you had a minute to do it. What would you say? Someone is watching, listening, probably they're despondent about their careers and this changing world of work. What would you say to them?
I would say don't give up on yourself. Keep your dream alive. I know it sounds so cliche.
So true, though.
Yeah, it sounds so cliche, but the thing about it is make sure that you keep your dream alive and get yourself there, and also make sure that you open yourself up to the world. I mean, right now we've got the AFCTA, whereby we are pushing towards One Africa. What opportunities are there for you? And don't become myopic in terms of the environment that you're in. I mean, spread your wings, go beyond borders, and make sure that you can literally, the world is your oyster. I know I'm speaking as if it's cliched, but once you're not having a myopic view in terms of, I'm in South Africa, there's high unemployment rate, ask yourself, I'm in South Africa, I can get a cybersecurity certificate and then support somebody from my home and still make money. The world is your oyster, and there's so many opportunities out there, and I think that we need to not sleep on ourselves. And as I said, it's a matter of finding who you are and then mapping it out. There's a lot of potential and possibility.
Yeah. Geography does not matter anymore.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. As long as you have connectivity and a laptop, you already have courses, already have jobs through these two devices.
Yeah. Candice?
I mean, to echo what Kgomotso said, for me, it's just dream big, right? Like anything, I think if ever, anything is possible.
Right.
I think, again, from a networking perspective, make sure that you're keeping the right peers, right?
Sure.
The right energy, because that can also either, take you to where you need to be, or it could be part of the reason why you don't get to where. So I think be cognizant of the company that you keep. And then the last thing for me is seek out mentorship, seek out sponsorship. There are people like ourselves as we sit around this table that are willing to give of our time and we're willing to share of our experiences. And so for me, I'd say don't be afraid to reach out to people, to, whether it is that DM, because I do reply to the LinkedIn DMs. Like I've got an obligation.
Sure.
I was that person once. You know what I mean? So for me, I always take my time to do it. And so what I'm saying is, don't be afraid. Take the risks.
So we have Candice's son in studio today. Do you think your mom was saying the right things, by the way? Speaking of LinkedIn DMs, how do we connect with you? Is there any way to connect with you in some way or another?
Well, yeah, because I'm a corporate hand, I would say definitely through LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn would be the best.
And it's Candice Martin.
Candice Martin at PepsiCo at the moment, yeah.
Perfect. Kgomotso, how do we connect with you? What does Zora do? Do you want more business or sharp?
No. We need more. So, I mean, for me, you can also connect with us on LinkedIn through our company, the Zora Group on LinkedIn.
Sure.
And then for me, Kgomotso Mamello Motshidi. Yeah, so you can get me. I know, right? I've been looking at that. I was like, that's my girl. So you can reach me on LinkedIn or on Instagram at Kgomotso Mamello.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. This has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Let's do it
such
again.
a pleasure.
Yeah.
Would you come again?
Yeah,
Come
we
again.
would. We would.
I mean,
together.
look, we're twinning.
Like we're twinning.
Her middle name is Patience.
Patience
I've got
is
it tattooed
got
on my
Patience.
wrist.
Oh, nice.
It's like it's a whole vibe.
If you're doing this thing together, we must schedule 3 hours because
Yes.
to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been an amazing episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. The team always reminds me to say, please subscribe, please share, because this content is worth it.
It is.
There's more to podcasting than that other one. Stop it.
Hey.
Thank you so much, guys.
Oh, amazing. Kaluma.com.